Igor woke up closer to noon. The calendar marked Saturday. This meant that waking up at 12 p.m. today was far from the worst option. Igor's mouth was so dry that it felt like he could drink 5 liters of water in one gulp. Friday evening had been amazing. First, there was beer, then some shots, followed by more beer, cognac, and it seemed like everything repeated. Igor couldn't even remember where he ended up after the bar, how he called a taxi, or how he got home. However, Igor had a very good reason for such behavior. His wife, Valentina, had gone to visit her parents in her hometown, and left alone. Igor could allow himself things that, if his wife found out, she would surely kick him out of the house. Igor finally forced himself to get out of bed. Surprisingly, his head didn't hurt much. Probably, the alcohol was of good quality. After going to the kitchen and drinking the remaining mineral water from who knows when, Igor realized he needed to go to the nearest store. He urgently needed to buy something carbonated. But first, to get into a fully functional state, Igor headed to the shower. Changing the water from hot to cold several times, Igor felt he had fully come to his senses. All that was left was to drink plenty of carbonated water and have a snack. Leaving the house, Igor first went to the nearest store and bought mineral water. Remembering that there was a great cafe a couple of blocks from home, where he and his wife sometimes went, Igor headed there, deciding to take a walk and get some fresh air. Arriving at the cafe, feeling hungrier and hungrier, Igor ordered much more than usual and, despite everything, managed to finish the entire order. He decided to walk back as well, since the weather was good, and the sudden sunshine made him feel light and refreshingly autumnal. Deciding to indulge in sports today, Igor even climbed the stairs on foot, although he and his wife lived on the 6th floor. Climbing to the 4th floor, Igor suddenly heard a piercing female scream. Without thinking, he pulled the door handle of the apartment from which the sounds were coming. Strangely, the door was open. Rushing inside, Igor saw a woman and a man engaged in intimate activities right in the hallway. Apologizing, Igor was about to leave and not disturb the young couple's fun, when he suddenly noticed a photograph on the wall. From it, the apartment owner smiled at Igor in a wedding dress, and next to her, in a perfectly fitting suit, stood a man who clearly did not resemble the one currently in front of him. When the young man rushed out of the apartment, the hostess, who had also managed to compose herself, approached Igor. They stood looking at each other. The hostess, who introduced herself as Polina, immediately understood that Igor had figured everything out after seeing the photograph. Therefore, she asked what she could do for Igor to ensure her husband didn't find out about what happened. Igor was silent. On the one hand, male solidarity played within him. He wanted to tell Polina's husband everything. But on the other hand, he understood that he really liked Polina. With her cute face and stunning figure, it was practically impossible to resist. Not knowing what to do, Igor stood there, holding his breath, while his thoughts raced for an answer. Suddenly, Polina stepped close to him and said she was willing to spend the day and even the night with him, if it would be just this once and remain between them. Still doubting and somewhat shocked, Igor stood rooted to the spot, but Polina's next move finally dispelled his doubts, and he couldn't resist. Igor returned home only in the morning, happy, and he didn't even want to sleep, remembering the things they had done. However, as soon as he lay down and his head touched the pillow, Igor, who had experienced multiple mood swings that day, fell into a deep sleep. Waking up the next morning, Igor couldn't understand if everything that happened to him yesterday was just a dream or if it really happened. Finally realizing that Polina was indeed his neighbor from the 4th floor, and knowing that her husband would return from his business trip only in 3 days, Igor decided to visit his new acquaintance again. After washing up and taking a shower, Igor even made himself an omelette, had breakfast, and then, with renewed energy, rushed down the stairs to Polina's. Knocking on the door, Igor heard footsteps. His imagination painted various pictures, but when the door opened, Igor saw a modestly dressed woman in front of him, with no hint of the seductive beauty he had spent almost the entire day with yesterday. Seeing Igor, Polina blushed and, without inviting him in, asked what he wanted. Finally managing to get invited into the apartment, Igor tried to start a conversation. He said that he had enjoyed the previous day immensely and was ready for periodic meetings with Polina. Hearing that it would not happen again and that Igor could leave the apartment, the man hinted that he could inform Polina's husband about what had happened. In response, she said that she had fully repaid him for his silence yesterday. In the end, Polina managed to kick Igor out of the apartment. He certainly did not expect such a turn of events. It seemed to him that Polina had enjoyed everything yesterday as much as he had. Therefore, he decided that he must get what he wanted. Almost every hour, he went to Polina's apartment and rang the doorbell. However, each time she came to the door and told Igor to leave. It seemed that this only excited Igor more, not used to stopping halfway. The next day, a little before noon, Igor went to Polina's again, following the now established routine. When she opened the door, Igor entered without asking and closed the door from the inside. He once again tried to blackmail his neighbor by threatening to tell her husband everything. However, Polina, apparently tired of Igor's unjustified advances, behaved completely differently this time. She told him that she knew he was married, adding that she could also tell everything to Igor's wife. Polina threatened that if he showed up at her apartment again, his wife would definitely find out that he had cheated on her. Igor was shocked. He certainly did not expect such a turn of events. Silent, he opened the door and shuffled down the stairs. He needed to smoke urgently. Lying in bed until evening, Igor couldn't figure out what to do. Finally overcoming himself and getting out of bed, Igor went to the kitchen. And then a wonderful idea came to his mind. Finding a cake in the fridge, bought the day before, he went down to the 4th floor to the now familiar apartment. Ringing the doorbell, Igor heard footsteps behind the door. When Polina was about to start scolding, Igor asked her to open the door, promising not to do anything bad. Apparently, a naturally trusting woman, she still opened the door, and Igor found himself at Polina's again. Looking at Polina, he handed her the cake and said he was asking for forgiveness for his behavior and that he would never tell anyone about what had happened. Polina was forgiving, so she said she forgave Igor and then invited him to the kitchen, where she made tea, and they ate the cake Igor had brought. When Igor was leaving, he apologized again, to which Polina replied that she might have been wrong too. Returning home, Igor was beside himself with joy. He was so proud of himself that he was beaming with happiness. Of course, he had so virtuously turned the whole situation around that everyone was ultimately satisfied. Moreover, Polina said she would never cheat on her husband again, and Igor had mixed feelings again. On the one hand, he enjoyed spending time with Polina, but on the other hand, he felt sorry for Polina's husband. Taking a bottle of cognac from the cabinet, which had been kept since the New Year's celebrations, Igor decided that this victory needed to be celebrated. Falling asleep in the chair to the sound of the TV, Igor smiled in his sleep. The next morning, waking up with an unpleasant ache throughout his body, he realized that sleeping in a chair was far from the best idea. Igor had breakfast and started cleaning the house because his wife was returning the next day, and his life would return to its gray routine. Home, work, home.